Quick little thing about annotations and drafting and so on. And just feel free to interrupt if you want to. Yes, I'm recording. Not that free to interrupt, but you can ask questions. So we got these. Which group is this? What's your guys? Group 7. Group 7 stuff here. So they have this row house here, double row house. And let's just take a section box through it. It's always good to have an enforcer. Well, there's probably a slight problem here with the stairs. Huh? Yeah, I won't go into the stairs stuff today because obviously, yeah. But anyway, we won't worry about that. Well, what I'll do is we'll start off by. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to start up a sheet list. Have you got a sheet list in here already? Yeah, you've got one actually. If you don't have a sheet list, you can always just right click and say new sheet list, and then you can set up a schedule of sheets based on the information you want to put in there. So you just say start with, I suppose, the sheet number, the sheet name. You can add the issue date, that's so important, paper size. You can add all that information, and then you end up with something like that. And you can modify it by changing the position of the, for example, I want to put the date down the end. I can just come in here and press move down, and I press OK, and it reorders it. Okay. This can then be put on a sheet, and it will automatically update the more drawings you add to it. Okay, so that's the easy way of doing it. It is a good idea to kind of write a sheet list up, because sometimes if you sit down with your group and try and figure out what drawings do we need to have in order to explain the building, you actually then realize how much work you need to do, and where the model is lacking and so forth. So it's actually a good procedural exercise as well. So let's say we want to, because you got a lot of drawings in here. You've got some call-outs. And you've got some. Those are plan callouts, and these are sectional callouts. Are they? They're called out from the model, are they? Or are they just drafting views? They're called out from the model. Yeah. Okay. So the nice thing about the callouts is, if I set up a sheet here and say, what do we got? What's this one, for example? This is first of all, what's the main point of this detail here? Is it talking about the way the door is fitted? Is it talking about how the wall construction? One or the other? The window. So it's about the window, effectively. So that tells you that... No, sorry, it's the door. So that tells you the SFB code for the drawing sheet that you want. I can't remember what it is offhand, but it's that's how you would number it. You would actually think to yourself, who's the audience of the drawing? And then you might modify the drawing slightly depending on who it's going to, and that's where you give the drawing number. So it'd be related to the window then, or the door in this case. So if I set up a new sheet here and I say new sheet, going to use the metric one, and then we grab this and just drag it in like this, and we could probably change the scale here. Let's change it to 1:10 just by selecting the viewport and changing the scale over here. And then we can put it on the sheet like that. And then I would probably switch the box off, because these boxes don't look very professional. You should always do a little cut symbol like this. Did you use this symbol from, is this a family or did you draw it? You just drew it, okay. You can also insert a family for that. So maybe I'll do that first. Let's just go to all again. So you can always go into insert, and they've taken it out of the template now, but it's called break line. Break line. And then you got all these different break lines. They're all pretty much the same. So let's just use this one. This is a double one actually. So we'll just use the latest one, download, here it is, open it up, upgrade the model. So these brake lines, they have different properties. Now this one has a masking region on the inside. So in actual fact, this brake line is for braking between two. If you have a very long section and you want to actually just show the key junctions in it, you can break it in this kind of a way. If I load that into the project just to show you what that looks like, go back into the view again. It always comes in through annotate and then detail component. So there it is there. So then it will come in like that.
Try to put it in the insulation because it doesn't hide the insulation.
What do you mean? Huh?
It doesn't hide the insulation.
It doesn't hide the insulation.
No.
It's hiding the insulation.
Try in that hatch thing.
Yeah.
You didn't do it in one.
It's possibly it's like an order thing. See, if you select it here, you've got these options at the top: bring to front, send to back.
Like that.
Didn't work. How did you draw the? Let me just pause this. So that's one kind of brake line. We can always go back in here and get the kind of the single brake line. They're all pretty much the same. Let's download the latest one again. Anyway, you get the idea. Load into project. And then annotate, component, detail component. So that comes in here. And we can delete this one. So that means is that you don't really have to spend a lot of time cleaning up your edges or trimming things together. It just actually covers it up like that. Okay. And of course it's all stretchable. So it doesn't have to be completely enormous on your sheet. So you can stretch it so that it makes sense based on what you want to cover up. Okay. So that's the easy way of dealing with that stuff. So let's go back into the sheet. So we have the sheet set up. So I'm going to double click on this, which activates the view. And that means I can switch off the visible crop region, which is the box around it. And then I can right click again and deactivate the view, which means it's not editable anymore. So that's kind of clean on the sheet there. And then I can move the title and put it in place like that. Okay. Now, what I will say to you is that I wouldn't title the actual callouts with the drawing number. The drawing number should be over here. So let's just modify it. So this drawing number is what we want it to be. 22 5 0 0 0 1. You're going to have thousands of drawings. Client is BATCM, and then here is where you actually fill in the drawing name, and here you give it an actual descriptive title that human beings can understand. You know. But what happens as soon as you put it on a sheet is, if I go back into the ground floor here, and you can see that your call out box has automatically updated to show the sheet. So that means that everything is related to everything else within the project. Okay. So that's just a little thing about that. Let's just change this to we'll change it over here. Rename. We'll call it detail to door frame. Sorry, I'm doing the wrong one. I needed to activate the view there, sorry. My mistake. Here's where we rename it. Rename it. Detail to door frame. Okay, so then you have something like that. Now, I would also put in here some information regarding the process, as in you could use your material panels if you wanted to, or some version of them, which actually talks about what goes in first, as in if you're putting in a door frame, what has to be there prior to it, so that you can actually fit it in there. What's the first step? What's the second step? What's the third step? So you could do that as a series of process boxes if you want to. You can set up a family of process boxes, but effectively what it is, you can either draw it in directly on the sheet, or you can set up a family that you can then fill in as a label. So it's basically just a box with a number, the name, and then an arrow out one side of it, which will, let me just do that again. Maybe I'll a little bit later this afternoon, maybe I'll talk about how to do that in detail. You know, just as a quick description of it, this describes, you know, what happens previous to the project. Then we copy it over here. We say what's the first step in putting together the door, what's the second step, what's the third step, and so forth and so forth. And each one of those you can give a workstage breakdown number to. You can either do that, or you can use the material panels that I've set up for you, because they already have a workstage set in them. So that's the other way of doing it as well. But just to give an idea as to how the construction process is related to the detail. It usually makes it a much, there's a lot more information in that type of drawing. Okay. So let's just change this here and say, call this detail to door frame. And as soon as I do that, if I go back into the sheet list, you can see that the sheet list is now updated with the new drawing. Okay, so the key to it is, if you have, wherever you have anything in plan sections or elevations, give it a name that human beings understand. When you put it in the sheet list, that's where you give it the SFB code number. Okay, rather than giving it the number up here. Okay. Now, the other thing we could do is, first of all, if I go into the ground floor plan, this plan to me is, the connections and everything seem to work fine. Maybe you need to change the, let me just see what's happening on that side. It's here, is it? Is that the same window? Yeah, so you can actually get it to cut through the element itself, so that it displays. And the way to do that is just to change the view range of the plan. So you just change it down here. So if it's, I don't know if it's lower or higher than standard, but okay, that was too low. But we can change the actual level of the cut through the actual window. Or is there something weird about this cut? Oh, this window. It's not changing anything. It's not changing anything. This is the window here, yeah?
Yeah, it's homemade.
It's homemade.
Yeah.
It should still show the frame. Still heights at 1107. Why isn't it showing? That's a bit weird. Okay, we won't get into that. I'm not sure what's happening there, but it's going to take a while to figure it out. But the main thing is to try and figure out, is this a concept stage plan? Is it for the client? Is it to describe what the house looks like? Or is it a technical stage plan? Either way, it's kind of halfway between one and the other. Okay? So if I was to duplicate this, if I right-click on the ground floor and say duplicate the view, it makes ground floor copy one. So the first one is, I'm going to rename this one and call this ground floor concept stage. So if it's ground floor concept stage, it's all about the the house itself, the actual spaces inside it. We need to fill it up with furniture. We need to give floor areas, and we need to take any constructional detail out of the walls here. All these cavity walls and so forth, the client doesn't want to see. So the quick way of doing that is just to change the level of detail down here. I could press this detail level, too coarse, and it just makes walls like that, okay? Because you don't want the client, you want the client talking about the rooms and how his life is going to function, or that type of stuff. You don't want them talking about the construction, because as soon as you put a line in there that talks about the construction, that's what they'll start talking about. So first of all, you need him to sign off on what he wants the house to be like, okay? So we give it that. Now we can also modify whether it's gray or black or whatever, just by coming over to the visibility and graphics over here. And we can come down to the walls, and I'm just going to override the cut pattern. And you can either make it, well, if you're going to be displaying it on a screen, it looks better if it's black. If it's going to be a drawing, it's better if it's white, because you don't use so much ink, so it's cheaper. So let's just make it black. It's okay. The pattern I'm going to leave as solid fill. Press OK. Apply. So that's like a good basis for a concept stage drawing, because the information about all the construction is removed. Okay. There's no door swing showing you. Anyway, never mind. So the next thing is we need to give it a floor area. So we did this before, but anyway, let's go into architecture, come over to room, and once I select room, I can come in here and I'm going to put this one in. We're going to put this one in. And we're going to so what it's done there, it's actually calculated that it's a room. I can then select it, and I can change this one to, let's assume is this a bedroom, yeah? Or, I don't know. Bedroom. Apply. This one over here, I'm going to select, you have to find this little X before you can select it. I'm going to select this one, I'm going to call this one living room. Apply. This one in the middle. That seems well. It's like a shared bathroom for everybody. Yeah, well, let's just call it bathroom. Okay. So it's given us these, but it's not just a text. It's related to another schedule as well. We can also select this label after we've done it. We can change it from text only to text and area. So now it's calculating the area of the room for us, which the client always wants to see. So select it. Make sure you select the label and not the area behind. Or we could select them, right-click, and say select all instances in project and change it all to text and area. Now we need to do the other way around. Select them, right-click, select all instances in project, change it from text only to text and area. So now we've got information in the drawing, and to make it pretty, we can give it a color scheme. So we go to Annotate. All the way over here, there's something called Color Fill Legend. Select that. We did all this last semester, didn't we? No. Project. I won't save the project actually. So it comes in with this no color scheme assigned to view. So if I just put that there, we can select that we wanted to calculate the rooms, and we wanted to do a color scheme by the name of the rooms, and press OK, and it does a color scheme for us. Okay. Usually it's a very ugly color scheme. It's you know, the colors are kind of depressing. So what we can do in here is also when you're presenting to a client, you usually want the color that you use for the individual room to say something about what the atmosphere that you're trying to create. So you usually give a kind of a warm color to all the living room and to the bedrooms and so forth. And maybe the bathroom and the kitchen you give a colder color to. Psychologically, it kind of makes a lot of sense. So we can actually select on this and edit the color scheme, and then you can just change to whatever color you want. Let's say up here. And I usually take it quite low down, because you don't want it dominating the drawing. You just want it to give a kind of a simple effect. So, oh, that was the wrong one. I want the bathroom to be blue, actually. So let's change the bathroom to something along those lines, but very light. We change this one, the bedroom, to kind of a orangish yellow. Just take it over a bit into the yellow. And the living room, we can also make it maybe a little bit more a little bit more orange. So you have then a concept stage plan. Now if you fill this up with furniture, then and remove most of these grids, let's just take the grids out, hide in view, category. That to me is a concept stage plan. Okay, so let's just put a bed in there just to have something going. What do they got? They got no beds. Okay, I'll put a desk in there then. Do they have any chairs? No. I mean, all this stuff, chairs, beds, all that, it's actually quite important that you get it in there, because if your house isn't big enough to get the washing machine into, for example, you will be sued, which happened in an apartment scheme close to where I lived in Dublin, which was designed by a French architect, and he hadn't taken into account the difference in sizes. So when they finished the apartment blocks, and they were very expensive, they were right beside the sea, overlooking the sea, they realized they couldn't actually get a washing machine through the door and into the kitchen. So that was a lawsuit straight away. Okay, so we can also take these section lines and break them so they're not so dominating. I can select this one and select the break line here, and I can just drag different elements out like this, so that it's not, the line isn't crossing the view. So that would be a decent enough concept plan if you filled it up with furniture. You don't need any more dimensions than the overall areas. Okay. Now, if I was to turn that into a technical design stage plan, we can duplicate it again. Right click, duplicate the view. And this time I'm going to rename it, and we'll call this one ground floor technical design stage. So now we turn the detail level right up to fine again. We modify the visibility and graphics so that the wall overrides are cleared. We switch the color off. If I can just remember how to do that. Graphic to blah, 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 blah. I'll leave that for the moment. I can't remember what that specific button is now. But what I would put in here is, first of all, we'll turn the scale up to 1:50. All these walls need to show a hatch at this stage. So the materials have to be present in the walls here. Also, the grids have to be switched on. So we'll switch that on. On hide in view. And everything has to be annotated. So let's start annotating up here. So we go annotate. I'm going to start just putting in dimension lines. So we can use the tab button to select the individual lines that we want to dimension to. So we've got an inner dimension here. I would show dimensions between all the grid lines like this. And these grid lines are kind of excessive. You would never show grid lines every 600 millimeters. This is just for second semester. But there would be a grid line between the main structural elements like that. But you always have individual measurements, overall measurements, okay? I would then put a dimension between the opening for the window and everything that has to do with the regulations, like the width of the corridors, for example. This corridor here. The width of the stairs. It's probably a bit too small. We don't need to do the doors because we could actually give the doors a door tag, which would be a better way of doing it. Which gives it the width you want. But I would also show pipe work, at least indicative pipe work behind, if that's what this is for, this little cubby hole here. We also want some dimensions that direction. All the main internal dimensions all the main opening dimensions, you know, doors, windows, and so forth. Hatches in the wall, so let's just select this wall, edit type. So you need to fill in your wall in exactly the way you want it to be. So let's have a look at this structure. Structure is masonry. So we can change the cut pattern here. I mean, if we're looking at, what are we looking at here? This kind of stuff. Okay, so well, the first thing I would do is just change the cut pattern so that it's at least a, what have they got in here? Do they have a lightweight concrete? Wood finish. Yeah, this concrete hatch, this to me this shows cast in place concrete. Where, is that what you want? No. Yes. But it's individual bricks, is it? Individual blocks of concrete. Yeah. So in that case, I would just show it as a diagonal crosshatch at that scale, and then later on, when I got into the technical, I would show it like that. That's a blockwork hatch. But then you might actually come in and make a component, as in a detail component, for the individual blocks, and then draw them all down the wall at level. Yeah.
Would that be precast as well? Precast?
No, precast I would show. First of all, if it was precast, I would show the joints in the wall. Let's say we wanted to turn this into a precast element, and let's say it was. What we can do is actually. The simple way to do it is to we'll make a repeating detail component. So that means you can just draw it. So repeating detail component, and there we have the bricks standard one. So we could edit the type and change the spacing to whatever 1200 or whatever it is. Oh, I need to duplicate it first. I'm trying to do too many things at once now. Edit type, duplicate. We'll call this concrete panel. And what have we got in here at the moment? Not so much stuff. Okay, and we'll make it 1200. That's okay. So now at least if we draw it, it's going to be at 1200 millimeters apart. So all we need to do then is find the brick DK size detail item. So we go into component, detail component, and we find brick DK size. There, just to have something. Edit the family, and then we can save it as a new name. Save as family. We're on the desktop. I'm just going to call it concrete panel. I think I'm choosing the wrong type of family here, but anyway, let's just see if this works. I'm going to just delete all this stuff. And we just make a rectangle to start with. And we'll just take it here. So let's say it's, what would you say your panel size is? 100 mils, something like that? 200 mils?
As it's 230.
Let's say it's 230. Actually, yeah, okay, let's just say 230 for now. And then it's 1200 high. I mean, we can go around and fill in the actual. Do it here. Whatever the actual join is, and so forth, and all the elements that go into the join and so on. So let's say it was something like that. Just going to mirror that. And then trim it together. And you know, you can kind of be as complicated as you want about this. You can put in as much detail as you want, but always consider whether it's what is the scale the drawing is going to be printed out at. Is it going to be 1 to 50 or you know? So don't put in too much detail because it'll just overwhelm it. And then once we've done that, we can actually make it a filled region. and we'll call it filled region. What do they got here? Let's just edit the type, duplicate it. I'm just going to call it concrete. And then we can modify the fill pattern to whatever we have. At the moment it's not giving us anything. Okay, so this, the family type I've chosen is only giving us the limited version. But anyway, let's just use mortar then. Huh? So you can just pick these lines. That, and then we can load it into the project. Okay, so back ground floor, and select the repeating item. This is a lot of stuff, but I mean, it's all stuff you kind of done before. Hopefully, let's take the repeating one. Sorry, I selected. This is a bit confusing for you. Anyway, let's just edit the type and put in the new one we made, which is probably called family 1. No, is it coming in here? Oh God, what did I name it? Can anybody remember? Did I name it concrete panel? Fashion. Yeah, concrete panel. RFA. Okay. Okay. So edit the type, concrete panel. Was it one of those? Now I'm confusing myself. There it is, sorry. Concrete panel breaks it down, okay. So then we have a repeating detail. So then I can use the annotation component, repeating detail component, and I can just go and then draw, whoops, choose the right one first, draw the concrete panel repeating detail, use space to flip it, and you know, draw it as far as until it gets to the point where you need to make a special end on the corner. So it actually covers up the hatch underneath, so you can continue to add detail to that until, you know, it makes sense. Now that's high quality level of technical plans. You don't necessarily need to do that level for this project unless you want to. I find it useful to do because it means you're counting exactly the number of modules in a plan, and also you can transfer that information directly to your details as well. Okay, we should be able to modify it in here anyway. So you can do certain things, as you can modify it so that you cover up the lines behind, you can cover up the joints and so on, and fill in the actual joints to go with it. But that's a high level of technical plan. Often what you can use is just this, which you will then take a call out from. We go into view, and then we go callouts, and you know, that will create a new plan view over here. There's so much stuff in this, I can't keep track of what's going on. Let's have a look at it. Yeah, there it is. Callout 1. And this is where you can actually transfer some of the information across to these drawings as well. So if we had gone through the technical design here, and let's say we had this, let's just move that over for a second. If we had this, let's move it across, put it here. Let's say we'd drawn in complete technical exactitude the plan here with all the elements in it like this, and we didn't want to repeat that information. We can just select all the 2D elements we have. We can use this copy tool. We can go into the callout, and then I can just go back in and say paste to same place, and it will pop back in the same place, so you're not repeating work again. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Again, the same things apply to the section view here. If this was a well, once you fix your stairs, if this was a concept plan, I would just take the level of detail down to coarse, and I would think about, you know, is this the I would probably make this black as well. I can see that you've got your floor is kind of going into your wall and stuff like that, I would kind of sort that out. But if you have any joints like this that you want to clean up, you can actually just use, if you select this floor, for example, I can select this join button up here and click on this and then click on this, and it kind of joins them together. You know, they're not being joined, but they are visually joined together. So it makes for a cleaner, it makes for much cleaner drawing, which is kind of important sometimes, because, you know, take out all the information that is not really necessary, because it just gets far too confusing. So you can go around and just do that quickly. This one and this one, like that. Okay, if I select them, you can see they're still separate elements, but visually they're shown as one element. Okay. And then again, if you wanted to turn that into a technical design, you turn the detail back up again to fine, and just make sure that, you know, things have the same kind of weight. So here, where we have this kind of hatch in the wall here, which is white background with a grey hatch, just make sure everything more or less is the same kind of weight, because otherwise it just looks unprofessional if you have a floor, for example, that's just popping out of the page like that. Yeah, okay, maybe that's enough withering on for them. The one thing that I haven't said to you is that there's also I said it to you in the first project, but this button here, this tiny hidden button under modify called line work. You can go in here, select line work, and then you can modify any individual lines.
No, this is only, or you can modify only the effects line, not the line.
No, on line work you can change it. So for example, you could change this one to hidden line. And these are model lines, so this is actually the 3D information behind. But the line work button under modify will allow you to do that. So you can change it to heavy lines, for example. You know, so that means that you could take individual parts of the drawing and change it to heavy lines.
Is it?
What if you want to modify the line on the left? Can you?
The line on the left.
The three line. The three lines.
These ones.
In this case you can, but if was the wall
This is a wall.
so it select on the wall.
You mean it's not? I mean, this is a wall here. So if I go modify line work, I can select the individual lines of the wall and change them.
And what do you do here? Because in the view it's not like so,
This one isn't. Why isn't that one working? Anyway. So modify, and then this tiny button here, line work. Or the shortcut is just LW, line work. W. If you're setting up if we go to the fire regulations sheet here, which is a decent sheet, but you can see it's kind of overwhelmed with grids. I would just show the main grids. I would just show the main grids on this. So you can always come into your individual drawing on the sheet. So sometimes you don't realize that things don't graphically work until you actually show it on the sheet. So you can always come into it and double click, and you can switch off whatever you want here. So in that case, I would probably say hide these ones in the view, and hide, oops, don't move anything, and hide these ones like that. Hide in view. Yeah. I've switched off your work sets, just not to complicate the thing. There's no work sets in the file I'm working on. And then just stretch the grids down, and do the same thing over here. There's probably a couple of main structural grids you want to have in there. So I would just switch off everything else. Hide in view, elements. Because in actual fact, in a real construction project, you wouldn't have that many grids in there. That's just to what am I looking for? Hide and view elements. That's just to make it simple when you're starting off. So I would do that for all of them. I might even just switch off all the horizontal grids in the middle. We can also double click it, activate it again, and over here we can select crop view, make it visible, and then just grab the edges of it so that the view itself is a little bit within the box, like that. That just makes it a little bit easier to make it invisible again. Just makes it right click and deactivate. You can see that all the boxes are kind of overlapping each other, so let's just do this one as well. Invisible. That was working. God damn it. What is this one? The other thing you can do when you're in the sheet view is, if you don't have anything activated, you can come up to the view, and there's something up here called guide grid. So you can actually switch on a grid that overlays the sheet, so you can kind of organize your views with more precision. So it's not like a guesswork kind of thing. So that's just this button up here, guide grid, under the view tab. It allows you to organize things better, because there's just too much stuff in this view here. It's kind of confusing, and the only reason it's confusing is the graphics just need to be modified a little bit. Okay, and we can hide it again. The guide grid won't print out, so you don't necessarily have to hide it each time. It's just there as a kind of as a help for things. Anyway, just thought I'd mention that.